What's going on, guys? This is Ed from Bro Soda Brewing. I think it's time for another episode of
Wheel of Beer,
the game where I randomly select a beer style to brew, but then I also randomly select a food item to brew into it. I'll walk you through the process from start to finish, but at the end I'll do a tasting, and I'll let you know how it is. Will I be brewing a hot dog Helles? What about a barbecue Belgian? Maybe a chicken Czech Pilsner? Stay tuned to find out on Wheel of Beer.
Really trust them. Life on my back, yeah, I really had to cut them. She like the vibe, but I do not trust her. Keep it on the low, she tryna blow my cover. Remember them mixtape covers and the tracks that was whack, too bad. I ain't know we had them bars like that. Yeah, I got it like that. Yeah, I got it like that.
So for the second time, I'm breaking out my trusty wheel. I'll load it up with all the styles I found listed on Brewfather, and go ahead and give it a spin. Whatever it lands on will be the beer that I brew this week. 24B. Checking back in Brewfather because I haven't memorized these. It's a Belgian Pale Ale. I love Belgians, I love Pale Ales, so at its core I should love this. At its core, but that may change. Let's go back to the wheel. So now I'll generate some random foods. Okay, honestly some safe options on here. Aside from gravy and soy milk, I think. Alright, let's put these on the wheel and see which one's going on the beer. Unsweetened chocolate. Chocolate Belgian Pale Ale. I've never heard of that done before, and I've definitely never tasted anything like it, so yeah, I can imagine it turns out pretty good. So yeah, I'm going to go head over to my GFs, and then when I get back, it's time to brew. Alright, so I just got back from a trip to my GFs, and I'm back with my cacao. That's right. A phrase you'd expect to hear from the boyfriends that date women with braces, but also what I'm going to be throwing into this beer. Honestly, the more I think about it, I think this is going to turn out pretty good. I can imagine the Belgian funkiness and the chocolate kind of working well together, so yeah, I'm pretty stoked for this one, so we'll see how it goes. Plus, it's a bonus that gravy was on that list and didn't get selected, so I can imagine that would have been a really disgusting waste of ingredients, but just remember, if the wheel wills it, I will brew it. So for this recipe, I'm going to be brewing my GF's Belgian Pale Ale all-grain recipe kit. I'll put a link to the recipe in the description. It's on their website. Shout out to the team there, because despite the inconvenience in inventory tracking, they were more than willing to scale the 5-gallon recipe down to 2 for me. So I really appreciate the people that acknowledge that it really is my world and they're just living in it. Okay, so here's the recipe entered into Brewfather. My GF's recipe includes multiple options for yeast to ferment with, so I chose the Y Yeast Abbey Ale. To incorporate the chocolate, I'm using cacao nibs in the primary fermentation. When researching how to include cacao, I determined that including it in the mash could potentially add too much extra bitterness, and I want this to turn out on the sweeter side if possible. All the sources pointed towards adding it during secondary fermentation. Secondary fermentation, though, as you all know, is for virgins. So I'm just going to plop it into the primary fermentation in a muslin bag so they don't settle to the bottom with the yeast. In terms of amount, I went with the higher end of the spectrum. I'm not here for hints or notes of chocolate, so let's load this bitch up. So for this brew, I decided to take it back outside. Brewing on a stove like a poor boy for the last video really made me appreciate my propane burner, and since it was slightly above freezing, I pulled the trigger on an outdoor brew. So I lit up and got the mash water rolling. In the meantime, I decided to take out my sexual frustrations on my yeast packet. For those of you that don't know, there's a little smack pack in the Y yeast packets, and this little bastard was elusive. When the water got to temp, it was time to mash in. And just because I'm so eye-bleedingly desperate to fit in with all the other homebrewing content creators, cue the slow-mo grain pouring and grain stirring B-roll. So I left that to stew for about an hour while I went inside to do some sanitizing and cleaning. I wanted to include some footage from that part, but most of it was a little too hot for YouTube. You can find that content on my OnlyFans. But here's a little teaser to get you warmed up. Sweaty and satisfied, I went back out to end the mash and begin the boil. So it was an hour-long boil. I added 0.3 ounces of Tettnang hops at the 60-minute mark and 0.3 ounces at the 30-minute mark. I don't really know what I was trying to do with this shot. It's kind of like the bad angle from the movies. If you don't know what I'm talking about, consider yourself blessed. I also tossed in some Irish moss for clarity. I don't normally do this because the clarity of the beer doesn't determine whether or not it gets me drunk, but I'm a homebrew YouTuber now, so I'm held to a higher clarity standard than Anheuser-Busch. The boil finishes without a hitch, and I begin the chilling process. In the meantime, I went ahead and weighed out my cacao nibs in a sanitized muslin bag. Of course, I needed to take a taste. This shit's pretty tasty. Drunk me might turn these into a snack. After chilling the brew, I took a gravity reading. I like to brew what's called big beers, and then dilute it after the fact to more consistently hit my gravities, rather than meticulously calculating everything ahead of time and then boo-hooing when I don't hit my numbers. Kind of like a nerd when they get a B+ on a math exam. This is Bro Soda Brewing, not a math lab. With some eyeball measurements and an online calculator to do the work for me, my second reading was right on the money. Next, I channeled my inner Willy Wonka and finger blasted the cacao into my Oompa Loompa of a carboy. Then went the wort, then the yeast. Lastly, my new tilt hydrometer that I received for Christmas. This was my first time trying it, and it resulted in a couple of realizations. 1, I don't think I calibrated it right. 2, my keezer's kind of shit for accurate temperature control. But 3, fermentation graphs give me nerd boners. But I'm still not a nerd though. But once fermentation was done and I was ready to keg, I had to take care of some unfinished business first. I had to dump the last batch. May the turnip Scottish Light rest in peace. Not only is it my first wheel of beer dump, but my first dump ever. I pray that I never have to live through this level of loss again. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a new brew was born. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure to introduce Belgian Binoculars. A light, crispy, malty, refreshing Belgian Pale Ale. A great beer to satisfy those late-night chocolate cravings, and a great beer to satisfy those late-night urges for some funk. Just whatever you do, don't look up Belgian Binoculars on Urban Dictionary. Alright, we got the Belgian Binoculars here. Let's give it a sniff. It smells like a fart the day after Halloween. But like, it's your own fart, so it kind of smells good. It smells like Judge Fudge joined the good people over at the Black Draw organization.
I don't have time to bust a fat in my face. I'm far too busy being delicious.
Let's take a taste. Honestly, it's really good. It's got the Belgian funkiness that we all know and love, with just like a hint of the chocolate on the back end. I thought I put a lot of cacao in based on the research that I did, but it's really not shining through as much as I really wanted it to. So I guess this is kind of a lesson learned for next time. Next time to make sure to overdo it. And yeah, so I'll probably end up actually brewing this again. Just add a shit ton of cacao next time to really make that chocolate flavor come through. But yeah, it's light, it's crispy, most importantly, it's crushable. So it may become a Bro Soda staple moving forward. Alright, let's give it another go. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely be brewing this one again. For sure, just with more chocolate. Oh. Well, that's all the time I have for tonight. Thanks for watching another episode of
Wheel of Beer.
Cheers.